Hi everybody, Namaste. Welcome back to my channel and this journey through the Tarot de Marseille. This personal, very personal journey of exploration and revisiting the cards through a different lens and learning again, learning over time. This has been a really long journey for me, as it has for many of you. And today I have explored, reread Tarot of the Holy Light. Some of the more contemporary books. I just went and reread Florenois' chapter on the lovers, and I pulled out the Red Seeds guidebook, the Red Seeds Tarot, trying to really tap into what in the world this card is, because it is a very, very confusing card, and one that's taken on a really different nuance in contemporary tarot, and sometimes not. And sometimes yes. And so, yeah, so let's look at these cards and just chat. Just chat. If you're new, my name is Sadhana, and welcome. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the post chat that happens later on in the comments as well, too. Hi, Aria and Dee. Thank you for being here today. And yeah, so let's start with some of the older decks, and then we will work our way forward and look at some of the more contemporary symbols associated with this card. La Marue, which appears to be plural, but there is some discussion whether or not this is actually a plural or a singular, lover or lovers. And so what are we going to do with that is another question. Let's get rid of that one. Let's this one. All right. Okay. And I will do my best to name decks as they appear on the table. And if you've been watching my channel, you should be familiar with many of these. And I really enjoyed actually going through David's discussion of this card as well. And I think there's a lot to unfold here. Honestly, I don't know where to begin, but let's start with this one, where we have Cupid, and we have a fountain and two souls, one on the left and one on the right of the fountain, gathering perhaps in a public square. And I would assume that there would be other people around. They wouldn't be alone here. I'm just looking at the sun. Interesting, in the Soprafino, it almost looks like it's cloudy, like Cupid is bursting forward from a cloud, as opposed to the radiant energy. This is the Jacques Via-vie, Jacques Via-vie, contemporary of both Noblet, contemporary of Jean Noblet, published in 1650. This is a deck that I have just two different imprints of the majors only. This is from letarot.com. And if you go back and go through these videos, I have been linking all of my decks below. If you don't know what you're looking at, this is the Noblet from the same source, and this is Il Meninghello Soprafino. which does change a little bit depending on the iteration of the deck you're looking at. So I want to start by saying that where does this scene take place, and building in a context. There's some indication that, and it's funny, as I was reading a lot of these books, I'm thinking, wow, this sounds like, I just watched the latest season of, oh my goodness, British Bridgerton. I just watched the last season of Bridgerton. When lovers went, or potential lovers went out to promenade. And so they would go out and promenade with their families in public places with the intention of being introduced to others or meeting others. And so when I look at this card here, I imagine perhaps, and maybe it's not so intentional, but there have always been gathering places in communities where people would go to meet others. And in this day and age, we have different kinds of gathering places where people go to meet others, and sometimes with chaperones and sometimes not with chaperones. But one of the little nuggets that I've been contemplating, and it has to do with this idea of going outside of the town, going outside of the home. And one of the words that really struck me was crossroads. That we have these encounters at crossroads. And I think you can pull in kind of where I'm going with that, as far as the idea of 3 plus 3, and the choices that need to be made when we come to a crossroads. We also meet people at crossroads. There are different things that present themselves at crossroads. And so I really liked that word coming up, because I've been really sort of deep in analysis of this card in terms of Golden Dawn associations with the astrological sign of Gemini and its associated minors. And it's really kind of refreshing to step out of that and to look at the card in a different light. So if you have a book like J.M. David's Tarot de Marseille, you can look at lots of different cards, both intended cards that were intended to be lovers cards, as well as other associated pieces of art. And one of the things that struck me in some of the older decks was that in a scene such as this one, you would see other people in the square. And there may be people sort of moving people together, not so subtly. Some of them appear to be kind of crowded. Maybe I just imagine there would be little corners where people could meet. And Aria says the fountain looks like Romeo meeting Juliet at the fountain in the garden at the party given by her family. It does, doesn't it? Yeah. And I think there's something to this infusion of solar energy here that says this is a good thing. This is something that's going to feed our soul. This is something that is going to invigorate us, perhaps stimulate our libido like the sun does. And I love the colors. I mean, generally I love the colors in this deck, but there's something here that just feels really harmonious. There's a really nice balance of the greens and the pinks. And and also the gesture, the hand over the face. It's so coquettish. Reminds me of living in other cultures where It's very common for women to cover their mouth or, behave in this manner, or maybe even swoon. And when I compare this, another thing too is, and you might want to chime in on this, the whole idea of a blindfolded Cupid. So in the Soprafino, Cupid is, or Eros is, blindfolded, shooting the arrow toward the figure on the right. Same direction here, but Eros or Cupid is not blindfolded. And in the Noble is. And the direction of the arrow is either going to pierce the crown of the figure in the center, or depending on perspective, maybe it could be shooting toward the right. If you look at the angle of the arrow, it may very well hit the left knee of the person on the right. And so I don't know that I read this as love is blind. One of the very best things I read, and I can't tell you the source because I don't take notes as I'm doing prep for these Saturday chats, but it was that Cupid does not need his eyes, because regardless, the arrow is going to hit the heart. There's a certain focus here. And oh my God, I just had another pin drop. Arrows. Not Eros, but ARROWS. Element of air is the element of the heart chakra. Now, I'm coming at this from a different angle. I'm coming at this actually from the arrow of Cupid. I have put this together before, looking at Gemini and the element of air, and that being connected to the heart chakra, and the whole suit of swords being connected to the heart chakra. I've come there before, but I don't think I've ever come there from the Eros of Cupid. So that's kind of fun. Yeah. So who are these three people in this picture, and what is the relationship between them? It's not clear. Before I go on, I'm just going to comment on this. No form of love has anything to do with intellect. It's all impulse and attraction. It's not an easy piece to digest by any means. It makes for a really interesting discussion, but it is an odd association. The what was I saying? Oh, who are these people, and what is the relationship among them? When we come to more contemporary decks, it appears, or even in some of the older decks, it looks like we have a priest and a bride and a groom on either side of a priest, or something like that, some kind of cleric. And the relationship between the three parties in various historical decks can be taken in so many different ways. And there are clues in headpieces, in hand gestures. And this one's really interesting, actually. I might say that this is a king on the left, his son in the middle, and his betrothed on the right. But you might see that quite differently. And looking at who is touching whom and where, upon what their hands lie, it's all really kind of interesting. And I do love the discussion of the circle of gazes in this card. Who is focused on whom, and possibly why are they focused on that person rather than the other person? And if, in one of the theories goes, if the person on the left is the mother of the person of the mother of the son in the middle, why does he so intently gaze at her? Is it such a hard decision to leave the nest of the home and move into the unknown of life with the one on the right? And that of course is one of many interpretations. Going back to the Gemini thing, I really didn't want to get into this today because it's not really an association of the lovers historically. But I love this comment. I appreciate the many points of view here. And I think that the layers of understanding this card come through so much mythology and like a deep, deep understanding of the connections between the teachings of mythology across nations, across cultures, and the journey of contemplating the twin myths to the love stories is just really interesting. It's really interesting finding the intersection of all of that. When I gaze, so there's something really different in the VOV deck, and I did pull out it's right on the top of the pile here, because in this pack I have 44 cards, and there's two of each of the majors. Maybe I put it on the top. I want to get the other direction of the Lover's card for you. I do love the purples. And remember, I was asking if anybody knew another deck that had lots of great purples, and nobody has replied to me. And I know there are some out there, and I'm going to have to rewatch a bunch of Masha's decks, because I know that's where I saw one and it was like, wowza, purple. Okay, so let's look at these two. Because we've had discussions before about the wood blocks, the wood blocks or the printing being reversed. But in this one, what is weird, but where is the arrow? Where is the arrow here? There is no arrow. Is there an arrow? It's really weird, because look at the hands. I don't think there is an arrow in this card. Maybe it's pointing towards the person in the center. But it's different. You don't really see the arrow itself, and the hands feel significant, and it looks looks less like a cupid than an angel or somebody offering a blessing to these two. And the other thing here is that this particular celestial being seems to be facing towards the older person. And that adds a whole other can of worms to this card. We also see quite a bit of yellow. And I don't know if that is through the whole. It'd be really interesting just to observe the use of yellow, which is generally associated with the element of air and intellect, because it's on all of the crowns. Okay. Let's go to Dee's comment. I like the myth of Hercules. He had a vision about the choice between two women, one sexy and one more experienced. Which one to choose? Hello, Perry. Welcome. Or perhaps if we look at the person on the left as the priest. Deck, please. Deck, please. Are you talking about this deck? Then the arrow being set toward the younger couple makes sense. And if you have one JJ Swiss, take that out, because in one JJ Swiss, sorry, I didn't bring it out to the table, the priest or the chaperone is quite a distance away from the other two. And there's space, the two are together, then there's a space, and then there is the chaperone or the other person, which is quite different. I've said this many times, I'm going to read the deck that's in front of me. Always. There will, I can't help but bring in other stuff as I'm reading, because I read a lot of stuff and I've worked with a lot of decks. But there will always be something about the card in front of me that feels really significant. Now, honestly, I can't say before I started reading for today that okay, thank you. Got it. The sun. And so I want to talk about the role of the sun, and maybe I've made a few comments about it in this picture. Why does the sun show up here, and what does that mean? Proper people were generally married off early as a means of inter-family political advantage, while nipping embarrassing indiscretions in the bud as early as possible. And I was also reading that they were married off for the betterment of the village or the betterment of the community. So they were paired off in a way that the community could thrive better. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. So if I were to pull out a Waite-Smith Lovers, we do have the sun there. And when I work with a Golden Dawn deck, I'm reminded that the sun is Okay, well, let's just say the sun is the center of our universe. The sun is the planet of the sixth Sephira. But how does that, in a historical deck, what does that say? How does that influence the energy of the card? Other than it's positive, it's light, it's a blessing. Everything is visible because we're in the full light of day. I don't know. It's speaking to me in a different way, and I don't know that I can put my finger on it, but something feels kind of significant here. Whereas when I'm looking at the Soprafino, there's something else, a different kind of energy here. Like Cupid appears out of the clouds. So, just a comment. Okay. Now let's compare the faces, the gazes, the circle of energy. This is Dodal, Gassman. This is a much more contemporary deck, La Corte de Tarot. And to me, it is not entirely clear whether these faces are masculine or feminine. And my first thought is that there may be a reversal of colors. So the feminine figure is in red and the masculine figure is in blue. And if we look at the use of color in the Tarot de Marseille, that may also provide some insight about mood or intention. And do the colors match? And I know the Gassman is colored a little differently, but maybe we should compare. This one is the Jodorowsky. Okay. And in the Dodal, which has really freaky eyes, I don't necessarily think he's looking at his mother. I think he's looking out in space. And there have been I looked at a few other images and things, and it almost looks as if at least one of the people in the Lover's card is just sort of looking off nowhere. And what that reminds me of is that indifference to arranged marriage. The sun is always a strength for life and the ability to live abundantly, giving us belief and consistency. And so this is one of those cards that is really question dependent. And I can't say enough about forming good questions in tarot readings, because we have a number of cards in the tarot that could go in an abundance of different directions. And before I kind of dive into, this is the new choice, Tarot de Marseille. Before I kind of dive into where I wanted to go with this card or the Red Seeds Tarot, I wanted to bring something else forward. And that is the 616 connection, which many of the tarologists talk about. Because normally I would be comparing the Lover's card. Well, we just talked about the Lovers in terms of strength, in terms of temperance, in a class I was just teaching. And those are discussions I have all the time. But how often does one compare the Lovers to strength? How often does one compare the Lovers to the Tower? So let's do that. Let's talk about this because this is kind of fun. And the reason there's a few reasons that this discussion arises. One, of course, is the numerology, the 6-6 connection. There may be a connection through if there's a priest in the card. But I think this kind of speaks to also Arya's earlier comment that Lover's card isn't always about love, and it isn't always easy, and it's full of challenges, and it's about perceptions and choices. And so when I sit with these two cards, one thing I know for sure is that when we enter into a new relationship, the status quo is going to be different, whether we want it to be or not. That our minds will definitely be blown, that we're going to be forced to see things in a different way. I mean, even if we have been living together, even if we've been fooling around behind closed doors before, once we are in it, 2 feet in the door, it's going to look different. And I just think this is a really interesting combination of cards to look at. Okay, let's go through some of your comments. Darkness, and henceforth heaven is the sunny place of peace and godliness. Perry, I had a card that I was mucking around with the Lux Prognia Tarot, and there's a card in that deck that is just a raging flame. And so it looks like a powerful fire card. And it says on the card, hell is the coldest place. And this comment makes me think about that. How even in tremendous heat, we can be in the cold. And I don't know how that relates to what you're seeing or not seeing here, but every one of these layers could bring something up with a querent observing the cards, or with you having an aha moment as an interpreter of what's going on in a reading. Marriage is supposed to be a match made in heaven for the best union in combined families and the strengthening of families and society. And so that's kind of what I was saying before. In smaller villages and communities, marriage was created to sustain the health and the wealth and of that community. Many people find that married life is an extremely disappointing arrangement, which falls in line with the vacant stares you pointed out in some of the cards. Do you have the literary tarot? This is quite an interesting deck, and it speaks to not necessarily unrequited love, but impossible love, where lovers cannot get together because of class or geography or some other experience. And sometimes that distance and those vacant stares is due to a inability to release the perception that I've already had the love of my life, and there will never be anything to match that. And in that card, I'm sorry, The Age of Innocence, I think, is the book that it refers to. That first love, which was not consummated, there was I believe a kiss, was so powerful. It was felt to be of divine intervention, a different kind of love, a higher frequency of love. And so all of these discussions are just so fascinating. Yeah. And I think this is what is addressed in there's an abundance of love gurus on YouTube, and it's interesting to listen to some of them. But and maybe this is a wonderful segue into why I put this card out and why I'm going to read to you from the Red Seeds Tarot, and how I personally work with this deck. But I'm going to do your comments first, and then I'll go there. Yes, I have the literary tarot, but I haven't much time to explore it in depth. Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. And then Perry says, hello, Leon, welcome. Friends who are married are the most beneficial and the most likely to be joyously sharing this journey with love. Yeah. How rare it is, though, right? To start out as friends. Okay, let's go to Leon. I was just comparing these two cards. If I had to come up with a keyword for 616, it would be paradigm shift. Thank you for that. And then when I look at the two fallen humans from the tower, I am reminded how we are both going to have to give. It's not about one person adjusting. It's about this dance of give and take, and creating space for others' quirks and talents, and also finding empowerment through what the other reflects back at you. Okay, so this concept of the Vesica Piscis, and this is this medallion that I wear all the time, and I bought this from the creator of the Tulku Oracle, and it's just a symbol that really reminds me of the importance of this space. Yes. We may have an abundance of differences. But there is this sacred space in the center where we are both better because of the relationship. And if you can find it, it can be tremendously healing. And I don't know, sometimes I just get really overwhelmed in this notion, this concept. And what did I want to say? And I think another piece of this is that it's there regardless of whether you are here and I am here. It's still there. We just need to keep looking in that direction regularly enough that we don't forget about it. Okay, I want to go back to D and where we were. The question reveals the context of the Lover's card. I'm talking about Eros, Agape, or Philia. Yeah, from David. Okay, so let me go back to your previous comment. So this one. And then, did you say anything in between? Oh, you're talking about the question of the reading. Yes, the question of the reading reveals the context of the Lover's card. Whether the Lover's card is talking about Eros, Agape, or Philia. Yes, and if you're interested in this, so the David book is available as an ebook, and that's what I downloaded, and through Lulu, I believe. And it's a really interesting discussion. And he even goes on to say that each of the figures in the card can represent the different perceptions of love. So, yeah, thank you for that. How bare and thorny that central vesica piscis looks, so uninviting compared to the floral abundance in the outer areas of the wreath. That is a really interesting point. And sad. And challenging. All at the same time. It's like that central space should be alive. Like the wreaths should be reversed. That's a beautiful observation. It really is. Flexibility and the ability to live together harmoniously in a place of change and revitalization of our lives with enthusiasm and joy and learning. And I think the last word there, Perry, is really critical. Okay. This deck by Linda Hill, the Red Seeds Tarot, follows the journey of the Eleusinian mysteries. And I just wanted to share something with you from the Lover's card. Okay. Relationships take time, balance, and equanimity to create a centered foundation in which to love. Wholeness can be found on authentic, fertile ground where we can be in union with another, but also maintain union with ourself and the divine. One more sentence I'm going to read, but I just need to pause. So part of my challenge in interpreting the Lover's card is to pause and reflect on how to approach the topic of you are in this relationship because that person reflects something back to you for you to learn about yourself. And usually the Lover's card comes up in a couple sort of relationship. Seldom does this card come up in other kinds of relationships. It might come up in really close friendships, and passionately, like emotional mother, daughter, father, son kind of stuff. It may come up in that. Yet, not every querent is ready to go to the level of relationship is always about you. It's always showing something back. So the two is the reason the whole separates is so it can look at and dance with the other to better understand the other side. And so Linda Hale writes, wholeness can be found on authentic, fertile ground where we can be in union with another, but also maintain union with our, capital S, self and the divine. Reconciliation with oneself and another may be necessary. Now, I read that differently the first time I read it. Reconciliation with, and I'm going to restate that. Reconciliation with self may only be possible in choosing to engage in a relationship with another. Further, I would say that most people cannot reconcile their relationship with their self alone. And that's hard medicine to swallow a lot of the time. Yeah. Okay, let me go to Perry's final comment here. A sacred role of commitment and trustworthy support and nurturing with kindness and compassion, right? So necessary through the challenges. We have to love ourselves first before we can be in alignment with love for another. And Perry, you know the kind of work that I do, and I would say that most people don't understand this and don't agree with this. And sometimes I feel like I am banging my head against a brick wall trying to explain this, because people are so desperate to be in relationship and don't understand the purpose of relationship at a higher level. And I know everybody is not going to agree with this, but yeah, so I'm glad we are in alignment here. So thank you. Thank you for this powerful discussion today. And I look forward to those of you that are able to come back with more information and other insights in the comments later. And welcome to Leon. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Take good care. Namaste.